Hello, newsies.
I love our
Welcome.
little intro, and I know
This
you
is great.
know that I love our little intro,
Yep,
but I just love our little intro.
it's a great intro. Part of the intro is I'm Alex and this is Kate, and we talk about movies. Um, and this one's bittersweet. Um, I always thought we would do this one because it is
Weird.
definitely weird. But it's one of those like, okay, I figured this was perfect for like a cleanse the palate. Like if we did like three absolute stinkers in a row, this was like my secret weapon to get us back on track.
Like
And
if we did 3 trading moms in a row.
yeah. So we only got one trading mom before we did it, but it happened because tragically Paul Reubens passed away after a apparently 6 year private battle with cancer. Um, he didn't tell any of his fans, like only his closest people to him knew. People who thought they were close to him didn't know because he was such a private guy about it. He didn't want to bother anybody. Like it was one of those things that he just didn't want to do that. He released a they released a statement that apparently he wrote the night that he passed. That was very heartfelt, a message to his fans. Um, but yeah, it's 70. Like I didn't realize he was that old, but also that seems really young. You know what I mean? Like it's like 70. 70 is right there. We were like, do we say he had a long life? Is it like one of those things? It's that weird moment. Like, okay, well, 70. I mean, 70. He wasn't like 45 or something.
You know what it is? It's that thing of, I think, where you know how they say like celebrities get frozen in the moment in time that they're like known for or whatever.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a young age to pass away at, but he didn't feel 70 years old in my head. So it's just like a very weird thing.
Because when he was 30, he was playing somehow a 6 foot tall 10-year-old.
Yeah.
And so that there's difference there. So Paul Reubens obviously is the man behind the alter ego of Pee-Wee Herman. And the whole thing started out, he was in the Groundlings in Los Angeles, the comedy troupe, with people like Phil Hartman, who became his writing partner, who actually co-created the character Pee-Wee Herman with Paul Reubens. Like they were writing together, and he's listed as a co-creator, as well as John Lovitz. Paul Reubens auditioned and did not get cast in Saturday Night Live, while the rest of his buddies did, and so he used that to refocus all of his efforts toward Pee-Wee. Pee-Wee had come around with a stage show, which then got they filmed the stage show and put it on HBO in HBO's infancy, like in 1981, and eventually that led to Pee-Wee's Playhouse, which, like, I'm wearing a T-shirt with all of my favorite Saturday morning and after school cartoon characters on it. And there is one Saturday morning staple that is absent from the shirt, which is Pee-Wee, because Pee-Wee wasn't a cartoon. He was, but he wasn't technically. But that was a show my brother and I never missed growing up. So much so that if, let's say, one of us had an early soccer game that Saturday and we weren't going to be able to be home at that time, we would set the VCR to record the episode of Pee-Wee's Playhouse, even if it was going to be a rerun. Like we couldn't miss Pee-Wee because he was so much fun, and you could tell also, even when we were young, that there was a kind of a weird subversive counterculture to it. Like he was making fun of kid shows while doing the best kid show ever. So like Pee-Wee was an absolute touchstone of my childhood, to say nothing of the film that we are going to discuss. But I wanted to give like a broad overview of his whole thing before we started talking about the movie.
Sure. So I actually kind of feel like a little bit odd in all this because we didn't have HBO growing up, and this wasn't a staple in my house, but I remember the movie.
It was the Pee-Wee's Playhouse was on like ABC, I think.
Oh, okay.
On Saturday mornings. The HBO the like stage show that they filmed, they put it on HBO once. You can find it on HBO Max, or it's not HBO Max anymore. But you can find that on there. It's on Max. You can find that on there now. But yeah.
I don't actually remember like watching it. There was probably we had a very like consistent routine on Saturday mornings of breakfast and then going into what was my childhood nursery, but would be future dubbed as the Barbie room going forward. I think this might have been on during Barbie room time where it was like my sister went and played. But I remember the movie. It was really fun to watch again as like a real adult, like a grown adult, because I think, grab onto way different things and you realize like things about like what other movies were coming out at the time and how much of a departure this was, like, and all these things. So it was really, really fun to watch. And that whole class of improvisers, my sister didn't come up through Groundlings, but she came up through Upright Citizens Brigade. And so like just kind of through her comedic path, like I learned about like how all those SNL classes kind of came in. And I was thinking about, I heard Lorne Michaels say previously, like people that he's missed out on. And I can't remember if Paul Reubens was one of them, but like he passed on Jim Carrey. He passed on, I think, Jennifer Aniston, and talking about how it's such a funny thing because you're not looking for the 10 funniest guys that audition. You're looking for people to play specific roles. And I'm like, man, that's such a tricky thing to balance. And it's not, I don't know how Paul Reubens fits into that, knowing what he was capable of going in this direction. But it's so anything in any art form that is completely unique to itself, I'm just so inspired by and so in awe of. And this definitely falls into that category. It's a really connective watch as a viewer, I feel like.
Yeah, it really is. It's this is one of those movies that I'm like, honestly, I didn't do the budget or box office returns thing.
That doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. But it is still so odd to me that this movie perfectly fits together. In what it is, not only is it the major film debut of the character Pee-Wee Herman, and it predates the Pee-Wee's Playhouse Saturday morning show. It's the reason why that existed, was because of this. But also, it's the feature film debut of Tim Burton directing it. He had only done shorts up until this point.
What did that guy ever go on to do?
I know, that's the other thing. He directed Batman in 1989. Prior to that, he had directed 2 feature films. They entrusted him with Batman in 1989. Prior to that, he had made Beetlejuice, and prior to that, he had made Pee-Wee's Big Adventure. That's it. I feel like it's. I mean, obviously he deserved it, and he killed he knocked it out of the park with the Batman stuff. But the idea they would trust it to a guy who was very young at the time, director wise, is kind of crazy. But I think it was the combination of the genius of the Pee-Wee character with the sensibilities of Tim Burton as a director that really makes Pee-Wee's Big Adventure work. I will not spend too much time on it later, but I have to mention that this movie is a miracle because we have evidence. I unfortunately saw last night what happens when you have Pee-Wee and not Tim Burton, because then you get Big Top Pee-Wee, and that thing's a travesty. Ooh. So I will mention that later. not go too much into detail of it, but I want to talk about Pee-wee's Big Adventure and how that whole thing came about. Phil Hartman is credited as a co-writer of it. He has a very bit part at the end. I'm kind of sad they didn't like have him be a major part of all these cameos that they had. But it's cool that he has that little spark as a reporter. But this, at its core, is a movie about a boy who loves his bike very, very much. And that's it. It could be a boy and his dog, but it's a boy and his bike, because that's basically how he treats it. Also, boy, this is the thing about the Pee-Wee Herman character that doesn't make any sense. Like, you have to immediately just go, okay, we're just gonna take it at face value as they're presenting it to us. Boy, everyone keeps calling him this boy's a hero. Like, they keep calling him a boy. 20. I don't know how old like Pee-Wee, because Pee-Wee Herman's not an actual like a thing. Like, I don't know. You can't say, oh, the character is this, but he's forever arrested at this like maybe 10-ish mentally and behaviorally. So I don't want to like, but it's just an odd idea. I'm playing a kid. As an adult, I'm playing a kid. And we've seen that before, but not like Pee-Wee Herman. And that's the magic of it.
No, it is very, it's like his body kept aging, but he got frozen in time, which I always kind of liked about it. And like, people will go down all sorts of rabbit holes of like inner child, whatever with it. But like, I always appreciated that, like, there is all of that inside every adult, right? And I feel like this was just an attempt to rip that out of your chest. When you're a kid and you get a bike, that is the coolest thing in the world. In the world. And I like that they take now it would be, I don't know what that is as an adult, paid off mortgages and stuff, like a paid off car, a paid off new car, whatever that is.
I finally paid it off. That's getting the bike. Yeah.
That's getting a bike. But like, we know that feeling, like that feeling's not very far away. So to have that kind of like represented outside of you is kind of fun and cool, but it's definitely weird. Like, it's definitely it's something that you don't like. I don't know how they got people to take the risk on. I'm so glad they did, but it's such an elusive concept until it's brought to life. The fact that people were willing to pour any money into it kind of surprises me with that. Yeah. But Tim Burton, like, to what you said, between this and Beetlejuice and then to do Batman, I didn't realize that was his third film. My God, like, what a master of what I always liked about like a Kurt Vonnegut's writing of like, there's this other world, but it's such a human world. Like, he's so good at just like, all there is in this outlandish world is human emotion. And, here it's a little bit more grounded than some of the other ones, but Tim Burton to me just like walks into that so beautifully of just like, it doesn't feel like you're in a foreign place, really.
Right. The movie begins with a dream sequence of Pee-Wee Herman on his bike winning the Tour de France. And it's beautifully shot. Oh, you have to mention Danny Elfman. The score is so gorgeous. It's perfect. It has a sense of whimsy behind everything, but also in those moments where it's got to be dark, it's very foreboding. But there's so much, like, there's glockenspiel all over the place in the score. It's beautiful. But he wins the Tour de France, and he goes up there to like get his sash and his trophy and his wreath or whatever, put it on his neck, and then he wakes up because it's a dream. And this is the opening sequence is his house. He lives in a house. Again, you can't do this, but I can't stop myself. Left to him by a parent who died or grandparents. I don't know. He lives alone with a dog named Speck, but he has if you asked an imaginative 9-year-old when you grow up, what is your house going to have in it? And this is what the house would be. And I kind of love that. He he gets up and he tries lifting very tiny weights and he can't get them over his head, but that's his exercise for the day. He plays a little bit with his toys in his room, takes a fire pole down. When he comes through the layers of ceiling, he's now been dressed. So he's got one of those deals, which is nice. And then he sets up the world's most ridiculous Rube Goldberg machine to cook himself breakfast that he ends up not eating. He cooks himself 2 giant flapjacks with 2 big fried eggs and a big like strawberry for a nose, I believe, and then 2 huge slices of bacon for a mouth. He calls it Mr. Breakfast. He says, "Good morning, Mr. Breakfast." "Good morning, Pee-Wee." He makes the bacon talk, and then he says, "Can I have some Mr. T cereal?" says Mr. Breakfast. "Okay," and he pours Mr. T cereal on Mr. T, who was very popular at the time. Mr. T cereal all over his face, and he takes the world's biggest dining fork and takes one bite of the cereal, wipes his mouth, and then says goodbye to his dog and leaves. It's the amount of stuff that goes into making a breakfast that he doesn't even eat is fantastic, because also in an 8-year-old, 9-year-old's mind, you don't have to clean up. You don't have to clean that up. You don't have to do any of that. No, somebody else comes into the thing and resets the Rube Goldberg machine so you can make you breakfast to make the next day, and you won't need any of that either. It's great.
I did love it. Made me think about, like, with the fire pole. Every like dream house that I had as a kid had like a fire pole and or a slide.
Yeah.
And I was just like, why did I have such an aversion to stairs as a kid? Like every kid does.
Stairs aren't fun. Stairs aren't fun.
Fun, but neither is like a fire pole in reality. But it is a very fun mix of doing all the things you have to do as an adult, like get yourself dressed and make yourself breakfast, but like in a kid way. And I love the breakfast part of it too, just because this idea of like, it feels like a 9-year-old wrote this, because it's like, okay, and then I'm going to feed my breakfast is just like such a little kid thing that you would do. And you're always like making faces with your food. I have ADD as a kid. Oh my God, I was doing that before eting 100%.
Oh, sure.
Time, so.
Oh, absolutely. He's also got a very, very cute little tiny dog named Speck, who's a mutt. Speck, not Spot, Speck. There's also the whole thing where he goes into the bathroom and the window in the bathroom is an aquarium, which I always loved. And I was like, to this day, how can I get that to work in reality? Because I just love the idea of looking through an aquarium to the outside world is really cool. But he brushes his teeth with a giant toothbrush, pretends to be a mad dog, puts Scotch tape on his face so you can look up his nose, because that's the thing he does. This is all just, it's a perfect encapsulation of who he is. And he leaves his dog behind to go out, run some errands. He goes out the front door. His entire lawn is covered with accoutrement. There's just nothing. There's no empty space on the lawn. The HOA must hate that guy.
Oh my God.
But he yells at his neighbor, "Good morning, Mr. Crabtree. Good morning, Mr. Crabtree. Good morning, Pee-Wee. I'm going to water my lawn now." Okay. So he shuts all the windows because he's got the weird wavy flapping sprinkler guy. And that's how he waters his lawn. Also waters his neighbor's house.
Yes. This is also very fun. When you watch stuff like this as a kid, you don't think like it's little kid stuff because you are one. But like, I would always just like, weren't you just like always ripping off tape and putting it like on all the time? Like all the time.
Yeah.
Not usually like up my nose in this way, but like fake Band-Aids and all sorts of stuff. Like very, very fun to like go back into those moments. And the yard is just a blast. And I love how normally it's received by the neighbor and him in this scene. Like it's just this is just another day here at the.
But they're like, especially in Pee-wee's immediate world, there are no normal people. Right. All of his friends are a little off. The rest of the world might be like more normal, but once Pee-wee enters it, it changes. You know what I mean? Like he everything gravitates to him in this weirdness. But this is where we first meet the bike. He has to enter an elaborate code hidden in the siding of his house to open a hedge door. And there's his bike, which the thing that I always remember about the bike is it has this unnecessary, like, what do they call that? The little thing that sits on the front, like the Mercedes symbol. What is that thing that sits on the front of a car?
Oh, the emblem?
Hood ornament.
That's right.
It basically has a hood ornament that in the shape of a very crudely drawn plastic lion. And it's so iconic with the thing. The rest of the bike is, kind of elaborate as well. But that, it's just such an odd design for it. But he loves it so much, and he talks to it and cleans it before he takes the bike for a jaunt through the park, and uses a giant loudspeaker system to sing la 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 la, and then see some BMX kids trying to do tricks. So he tries to do tricks until he runs into the curb in front of a bunch of other kids and topples headlong over his handlebars. He's fine though, and he says, "I meant to do that," which is an awesome Pee-weeism. And I feel like he should have used it more. But like, I know you are, but what am I is the ultimate Pee-weeism. But I meant to do that is a great one.
It's up there, and it's honestly made me feel like less weird as a kid because I did so many of these things, and I was like, it just felt really fun to be like, oh, I wasn't the only one who did that. Like I was always just like riding my bike and just singing for no reason, very loudly. And
this is the thing about Pee-wee, is that he's not just like a 6 foot tall 10-year-old. Like the 10-year-old is a little off. Yeah, and that's cool because there was no representation of that in media at the time. Like there might have been like the third, fourth friend in a group of friends was like a little weird, but like not like this. And there was so much. There's so many of those little mannerisms that I'm watching that I'm like attuning to because I've been doing a lot of research about that kind of stuff. That I'm like, he's what they call stimming. The way that he walks around with a hand up here like this, kind of like doing this kind of a thing. There's very interesting stuff that I don't know exactly how attuned they were to any of that, because a lot of this research hasn't been done yet in 1984 or 5. But it was very interesting that he had this. It's almost like he's an ADHD kid in as an adult, as opposed to just like a regular kid as an adult.
Definitely. Also, didn't know I had ADD as a kid. Very aware of it as an adult. So going back and watching this stuff, there was a lot of identification with that. Actually really cool.
Yeah. He ends up at this big outdoor mall. This is obviously Los Angeles, though they never say it.
They don't need to.
They don't need to. But it will come up later as in one of those things where I can't stop myself from finding things that are wrong with movies. So he goes to do some he locks up his bike with a whole bunch of chain around a clown that is a waving animatronic clown statue, but he used like, I don't know, a full nautical mile of chain to wrap around the statue and the bike to protect it from being stolen. Oh, I should mention, as he leaves with the bike, Francis.
Yes.
Francis, who is the antagonist of the movie, played by the amazing Mark Holton, who also at this exact time was playing Chubby in Teen Wolf to great aplomb. He's the rich kid who wants to buy Pee-wee's bike This is, of course, where you're a nerd. I know you are, but what am I? You're an idiot. I know you are, but what am I? And I know you are, but what am I? Infinity, of course, is the end of that argument.
Of course.
But he says, my dad tells me I can have whatever I want, and I want your bike. I'm going to pay whatever you got a giant fistful of cash. I wouldn't sell my money for all the money, my bike for all the money in the world, not for $100 million, billion, trillion dollars. That's a great.
So
My daughter is her favorite thing to eat in the world now is for some reason. And listen, sometimes battles aren't worth fighting. Her favorite thing in the world to eat is Little Caesar's crazy bread. So she will we'll buy a little bag of it for her. She'll eat it over the course of 2 days, and then she'll want more. Like, Daddy, can you just buy more so it'll last longer? And then it's like, no, I'm not gonna do that because then it'll go bad. But by the time you eat it, it's like, well, no, I want you to give you what if you bought like 100 million billion crazy breads? And well, I don't think they have that much in stock, like it's there's a difference.
100 million billion trillion.
Mm-hmm.
I love this antagonist too, because like for something that is an adult that's a kid, it feels like in most grown-up films you get a lot of this of I want to buy that thing that doesn't actually have a ton of value, but you're
right
because you're the bully,
mm-hmm.
I want to have it because they care about it, not because it's of rich value.
Exactly.
And this is a nice way to bring that into like kid world.
Mm-hmm. Yes. But he insults Francis, leaves, and you can tell they have a very fraught relationship. But the other thing is that Francis is also an adult child, just an entirely different kind of adult child. He's the spoiled rich kid, fat rich kid child, and so his responses are all the same because they worked so well together because they are the same level of arrested development. But I love his you'll be sorry, Pee-Wee Herman, and then the music gets all dark. That's great. But he has to go. He goes to a magic shop where he meets Mario, the magic shop guy, and they do all the funny magic shop shtick. Little things that are given to him in this scene he uses later in the scene. But he goes over to Chuck's Bikorama to get a horn that was that he had made much louder. And the girl who works in this shop is Dottie, who has the hots for Pee-Wee Herman, but he has no interest in her. Because this is the thing that is so odd about watching this and then watching Big Top Pee-Wee is Pee-Wee not only doesn't feel like he's not into Dottie. He doesn't feel like he's into girls.
No.
Or the idea of sexual congress with anyone. He's a little kid, and that doesn't come into his thoughts, which is why it's so odd that Big Top Pee-Wee is all about Pee-Wee getting laid.
Yeah, that's real weird. But I also, so you're right. It feels like he's outgrown cooties, but is not ready does not have an interest in anybody yet. I feel like everything else that was coming out around this time was dealing with that in some way, and it feels like such an intentional choice to not have him deal with it that way. Mm-hmm. I'm not surprised at all that they tried to go for that for the sequel, because you had The Breakfast Club and all of these. There were so many coming of age movies.
Yeah.
That I feel like we're dealing with this, and I felt like it was just a really nice choice to deal with just maintain the innocence of that, and also to have the thing of just being naive to somebody being into you. Everybody's from that age on has had that. You've had a crush on someone and it doesn't even register to them, or you're the person who is completely blind to the fact that someone probably thinks you're really great. Right. So it's just fun because that's another thing that spans into that age and into where you're at as an adult. It's a I love those things that are just the most relatable situations, regardless of which phase you're kind of playing into with this.
Right. Anyway, this is where we get the first ever instance of you don't want to get mixed up with a guy like me, Dottie. I'm a loner, a rebel.
Probably the most iconic line in the film.
Probably. And so then he leaves because she asks him to go on a date with her, and he's not do it, so he leaves. But he gets back out to his bike, and his bike's gone.
I also
so he has a full on
how I brought up the Breakfast Club, like the James Deanness of the dialogue, but his aesthetic and like very forwardy, nasally voice delivering it is like so much fun. Like, what a fun contrast. But yes, his bike is gone outside.
His bike is gone. So he has a full-on panic attack, runs back into the store, faints, and comes to the paramedics, and he realizes what happened. He's like, and the cops who were there with him is like, we can't consider this police emergency. If it doesn't turn up, come to the station, fill out a report. Otherwise, good luck. And so he has to run around, find his bike. He's looking everywhere. There's some very nice, like, panicky but slow music that Danny Elfman creates for this, where he just sees bikes everywhere, but they're not his. So he does eventually go to the police and file a report. But he's like everybody, like, well, do anybody who would have wanted to steal it? Everyone wanted my bike. Just this morning, Francis. It's a wonderful moment of him. Like, I don't know. The thing is, I feel like he would have thought of this at some point in the intervening hours. But
sure,
I'll allow it because that moment is so great. So he runs over to Francis's mansion, and the butler is Professor Toru Takanawa, who's a giant sumo guy, and he's he can't get past him, so he sets up a little machine to like fake out knock on the door so he can go around through the side door. And Francis is busy having his bath in the world's largest bathtub. It's an indoor pool. The entire pool is about 3 feet deep, and he's playing with giant battleships, pretending to be a sea monster. And Pee-wee gets in there, Francis immediately realizes he's screwed. So Pee-wee's this menacing figure who stomps into the water and grabs him by the hair. And it's like, I want to sell you my bike, Francis. Oh, what would I do with that? I don't want that. I can have any bike in the world. You don't want it anymore because you already have it. Pee-wee's very smart. He's watched a lot of cop shows. And So he's the guy starts screaming, and he runs over and locks the door from the inside, and he says, "Go ahead and scream. We're miles from where anyone can hear you." That's always one of my favorite things I used to do with my brother all the time to tease him. I used to say that. But anyway, there's a fight scene in a 3-foot pool until they finally break down the door. The father, of course, Mr. Buxton, insists that Francis couldn't have stolen it. He's been here all morning. Okay, well, I guess that's true. I'm really sorry. He tricks him by giving him trick gum, and then he leaves. But he still suspects Francis might have had something to do with it, but he can't prove it. So now what we're going to do is, how do I prove it? So he gets everyone together in his basement to have an evidentiary disclosure of all the things he's come up with. And it is a fantastic scene where he is telling everybody what all the evidence he has, all of his friends, the BMX kids who are his friends, all the people from the mall, Chuck, Dottie. And so he starts talking, and then there's this was one of the greatest gags in maybe the history of film. Honestly, I do believe it, and it's all an accident. I honestly think it's an accident. They're smart that they did it like this, but I don't think it was ever intentional. This fella, 50-ish, with the most ridiculous mohawk you've ever seen in his life, in your life. Taps the guy on the shoulder sitting next to him and starts talking to him. And then Pee-wee snaps. Is this something you can share with the rest of us, Amazing Larry? We've never seen this guy before. We had no idea that his name was Amazing Larry. But you see him and you go, that guy's weird. But you don't know what context it is. And Pee-wee gives you all the context in the world that his name is Amazing Larry. It's an amazingly efficient, perfect gag. There's a deleted scene where one of the errands that Pee-wee runs in the mall is going into a shop where he has a conversation with Amazing Larry. We know who Amazing Larry is, what he does for a living, how he and Pee-wee know each other. But all of that is stripped away because they deleted the scene, which allows for the joke to be perfect. And I love that. Honestly, I don't need to know who the hell Amazing Larry was. I just needed to know that guy's name was Amazing Larry. And then to never see him again for the rest of the film. It's perfect.
It's pretty great. Because you also don't realize, or I didn't realize, how many people you did know and were familiar with already. They fold everybody in so well. And you're like, oh my God, yeah, I got introduced to so many people already. The BMX kids, like, and a lot of them are just like kind of not super identifiable.
Right.
So to take someone who hasn't been on your screen and give them an extremely specific and memorable name is hysterical.
Also, Amazing Larry.
Amazing Larry.
Amazing Larry is his name. Nothing like amazing. Fine. Larry. Fine. Put them together. No one's ever been. No. It's very like Larry Bird, maybe, but like there's no Larry that's been amazing. No. So that's wonderful. Maybe Lawrence Aloysius Knight.
Oh, maybe.
I think you should start calling yourself Amazing Larry and then see who gets it.
I was gonna say Lawrence Peter Barra, but he went by Yogi, and it's probably because he was like, well, no one's gonna think that Larry's amazing. No one would ever believe that.
Now adding Amazing Larry Barra. Era. I don't feel like it wouldn't work. So the whole thing falls apart because he snaps at everybody. Where he does this amazing analogy. It's like you're unraveling a giant cable knit sweater that someone keeps knitting. It's great. But everyone abandons him because they've been talking for hours. But he's going to go find his bike somehow. He trudges through this pouring down rain in the city. He gets accosted by a group of thugs in the alley, and one of them says, "Hey man, you're new to this turf. We don't take kindly to strangers around here." And then Pee-wee does this, and they all run away because he's so scared.
As they should.
And the lead thug who has all those lines about new to this turf, that's Tim Burton. Tim Burton has a cameo as the lead thug in that scene, and I think that's great. He was like 27. Something like that when he directed this. So that's young for a director to be doing that kind of stuff. But he's very smart. And so then he goes to this fortune teller who's obviously a scammer because she's a fortune teller. But she looks through his wallet, finds all these pictures of a bike and knows he's looking for a bike. And she's like, "Oh, is it okay?" "It's okay." Where is it? Where is it? She looks the neon signs across the alley that says Al and Mo's appliance repair. It's in the Alamo, in the basement. And she said, "Thank you. I'll never forget you." And he leaves his wallet with the fortune teller. And then the next morning he hitchhikes to the Alamo. That's where he's going to go. And no one will pick him up except for a man who was broken out of prison named Mickey driving a very long Chevy Impala. And I think it's a Chevy Impala. But they bond over being loners and rebels. And then they're stopped by a roadblock that Pee-wee subverts by dressing as a lady, and the fat Southern sheriff decides to hit on him right in front of his right in front of her ostensible husband. But they're able to get past that because he's so charming and disarming is Pee-wee. Then that night Pee-wee's driving, and Mickey's sleeping, but there's all these. It's so dark, and there's all these amazing street signs for like, oh, dangerous curve. Now this one's a bad one. Oh no, there's this one. There's a street sign for a curve that does this, and then falling rocks. And it's brilliant. It's literally just topping everything. And the brilliance of it is we never see the road ever. We just see the signs and Pee-wee moving the steering wheel like crazy, and then some falling styrofoam rocks. And they end up going off a cliff. But the convertible thing comes up and saves them, and they land safely. But Mickey doesn't want to have anything to do with Pee-wee after that. He says, "You don't want to get mixed up with a guy like me, Pee-wee. I'm a loner, a rebel." Deja vu, says Pee-wee. It's some good stuff.
One thing that's really fun about it is like I forgot that he could drive because of like the Arrested Development, and he's looking for his bike. Like, of course he could drive. He's in his 20s, but like it feels so unnatural, and I feel like that's such a testament to his performance because it's like you kind of bought into him being a kid a little bit.
Also, right? It's the 80s, and if Over the Top taught us anything, it is very common for 12-year-olds to drive.
Just hop in by the urging of their father in that case.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sure Mickey taught him to drive in a deleted scene.
Yeah.
And that's how they became best friends. There's an awesome sequence where it's only thing you see on an entirely black screen is his cartoon eyes. Like that's, and it's he can't. He's looking back and forth. It's really cool, very innovative and different, and also wonderfully minimalist. Like that could not have cost anything to do.
Yeah,
but it communicates everything. And then he finds the headlight glasses that he bought at the joke shop, and he puts them on, and the headlights illuminate. There are wild animals everywhere, and he screams, and that's it. We don't know how he gets away from all the stuffed wolves that they put around him in this scene. Obviously, taxidermy things, but we also earlier find out that yes, Francis was the one who stole the bike, but because Pee-wee went to the radio station to try and offer a huge rewards. Like Dottie says to him, "How are you going to afford to pay the reward of $10,000 or whatever it is?" And Pee-wee says, "It's very simple. Whoever returns the bike is obviously the person who stole it, so they don't deserve a reward." Honestly, it's good logic. But Francis apparently paid the most 50s kid possible, from who's not from the 50s. He's got his crazy little swoopy, slicked up hair, his pegged jeans, his Converse. It's like he says, "That's it. He won't let up." Like, well, what do you want me to do with the bike? Like, just get rid of it. Here. No, yeah, well, the deal's a deal. So fork over the money for lifting it for you, bucks ton. And so he's like, just get rid of it. Well, that'll cost you extra. So he gets rid of it. He sells it, and there's this very tragic scene where Pee-wee is looking the opposite direction as the bike goes, and they do a little fork in the road thing. So sad.
I got way too emotionally invested about a bike. I will say that.
Yep. Pee-wee is picked up by a hitchhiker. He's hiking again and gets picked up by a trucker. Gets in the rig, and is like, "Thanks for stopping. Nice night." "It was a night just like tonight," she says. It was 10 years ago on a night just like tonight. I was the worst accident I ever seen." And they cut part of this thing. And then they cut back to the rest of the story. And when they finally pulled the driver from the twisted, burning wreck, it looked like this. And then some weird claymation horror face, which like gave my little brother nightmares for years. Literally, he would wake up and say to my mom, "Large Marge is gonna get me."
They
Like
were
that,
talking
like
about that in the chat. That Large Marge scared the crap out of them as a kid. Who was saying that earlier?
that
Ryan was saying that. Yeah,
because it's an incredible jump scare that you don't think is coming because the movie hasn't had any of those, and also the absolute amazingness of that claymation was so vivid, and Pee-wee's obviously so scared of it. It totally works.
Yeah, Alex, if you know anything about me, it's that I don't do well with jump scares and horror elements. So it's not my favorite part of the movie.
Oh, was it? Okay. I guess I should have warned you. I thought maybe you would have remembered it, but so she yes, sir. That was the worst accident I ever seen. She drops him off outside of this truck stop, and she says, "Tell him Large Marge sent ya." So he goes into this rundown old truck stop and says, "Large Marge sent me," and you could hear everyone's spoons drop. Large Marge, that's impossible. And this old guy with a haunted look on his face gets up, like, "It was 10 years ago on a night just like tonight. Why, tonight's the anniversary." And he goes over to a big shrine for Large Marge. And this little thing I noticed while watching the film. Large Marge, when he gets in the thing, Large Marge is a career trucker. She was doing this for a long time. She's a woman, I would guess, not a day under 60. They made a shrine for her with born and death dates. So it says tonight's the anniversary, 10 years ago. So it says January 11th, 1974. So the movie takes place on a specific date, not a year, not a time frame. The movie takes place on January 11th, 1984. Which is always interesting to me when I find out those old things. But also, it not only has her death date, it has her birth date. December 5th, 1937, which seems old to us now living in 2023. However, in 1974, when she was supposed to have died, she was a little over a month past her 36th birthday. And they cast the most just hard-bitten old broad to play listen, she may have been 36 only if she started smoking 3 packs a day at the age of 4.
Well, trucker years are like dog years, as they say.
I suppose.
Lee Norman says she was a schoolmate of Linder.
It's possible. It's possible. Marge, she gone too soon. She was only 36, God bless her. She looked like she was 80, but she looked like anyway. So I thought that detail was interesting that they could have put anything on that shrine.
Sure.
But they decided to make her 36 in the shrine, but then cast a woman who was 63 years old to play her.
Yeah. They got a little inverted.
You know what? It's true. It's true. It's, you know what it is? It's all the lead gasoline.
Not great.
No, not great. Not great. Anyway, he eats some food, finishes it up, and then he goes to pay for it. But his wallet's gone because he left it with the fortune teller. So he has to work off a tuna platter and milkshake by doing dishes in the kitchen, with a hairnet and an apron over his ridiculous little gray suit with a red bow tie.
I also loved with the haunted legend Large Marge stuff. Everything in the world is weird in Pee-wee's world.
Mm-hmm. Everything.
But all of it's normal, right? Mm-hmm. So it's the fact that there's like a haunted legend and people are like, oh my God, it's the anniversary was like such a fun thing of that. Even in like the weird world, there's something that stands out as weird. Like nothing to do with this house, nothing to do with the bike, nothing. Like I love that there's something that like in every town has them, right? Like the haunted legend type stuff. Love that like innocence that comes into play there.
Yeah, that's great. The waitress gives him a little bit of her extra tip money to help him out, but then wants to talk to him about something. So she's got the hots for Pee-wee too. It's Diane Salinger is the actress, who's incredibly striking. She has these very angular features, and this beautiful throaty, smoky voice. And she wants to go and watch the sunrise with Pee-wee. And the way they do it is these are real things you can find in Cabrazon, I think, California, off the 10. Are these giant dinosaurs near the freeway, and so they climb up inside the T-Rex to watch while in the mouth of the T-Rex to watch the sunrise. And she tells them all about that she wants to go to Paris, and but her boyfriend Andy doesn't want her to go because he flunked French in high school, and he thinks everything over there is set up to make guys like him look dumb. And I was like, all right. So anyway, Andy, of course, is there, and he's listening, and realizes that she might have the hots for Pee-wee, because Pee-wee says, "Hey, come on, why don't you just go?" "Well, I do want to go, but no. Everyone I know has got a big butt. Come on, Simone, let's talk about your big butt." And of course, that's what Andy hears. So when they come down after watching the sunrise, Andy is there with a plaster dinosaur femur that he's ripped off of some kind of display, and he chases him around until it winds up jumping on a train, on a boxcar. And the problem here is that the train is headed west. But they just watched the sunrise, and the sun is right in his. The train is headed west. Like he has to go east to San Antonio from where he is. The train is headed back to the Pacific Ocean, and that makes me so mad that I noticed it and that it bothers me. The train is headed west. Just turn the train around and make it point east. Actually, you know what you got to do? Just turn the negative around so the train is going in the opposite direction with the. Oh well.
That's hysterical that you noticed that.
I was like, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. But he meets a hobo on the train, and they sing songs until the songs get to Pee-wee, and he can't take any more. So he jumps off the train, and he happens to be in San Antonio. That is a very long train ride. No wonder the songs got to him. Well, they were singing that whole time. Whew, that's a lot of songs.
That is me and my sister singing from where we lived in upstate New York to Myrtle Beach. We didn't have screens as a kid.
No, right.
So my dad got a dose of Disney for like 14 hours. It's that level of matinee. He did an incredible Gaston though, so we did.
Oh, well, that's good. That's important. He goes to the Alamo, and Jan Hooks, the wonderful Jan Hooks from Saturday Night Live, is the tour guide. And she's got this great Texan accent.
She does.
And there's some very, very funny stuff where she talks about corn. Corn can be used thousands of ways, all of which I will tell you about right now, because he wants to get him to the basement, and it just takes too long. So at the end of the tour, he asks, "Hey, aren't we going to see the basement?" And she says, "There's no basement at the Alamo," and everyone laughs at him. So he's humiliated and runs to the bus station. Of course, he has no money, so he has to call Dottie on the phone. And she's like, "Where are you?" "Texas." This is another amazing joke. Where are you, Texas? Where? I'll prove it. And he sticks his head out the phone booth and says, "The stars at night are big and bright." And everyone walking by goes, "Deep in the heart of Texas." They wouldn't do that anywhere else. They wouldn't do that in Oklahoma, I'll tell you that much. So she says, "I'm really sorry. Thank you for trying to help me find my bike. It's a lost cause now. I'll never get it back, blah, blah, blah. But could you wire me money for a bus ticket? I'll pay you back, honest." And she says, "Okay, Pee-wee, when you get back, we could settle up at the drive-in." And then bad connection, gotta go. And so he's sees at the bus station Simone. Simone has somehow made it from, I don't know that the dinosaurs are supposed to be in Eastern California, but they're somewhere a long train ride away. And so now she's made it on the bus to San Antonio, to take a bus to New York, to get on a boat to go to Paris. Isn't that wonderful for her? But she says, I know you'll find your bike, Pee-wee. Both of our dreams are going to come true. And she waves goodbye off the bus, and she lets her hanky fly away, and he picks it up. And then he's going to go and get his ticket that got wired to him. But what you know what? Andy's there, chases him into a rodeo, and he has to hide in a trailer. So he puts on a ridiculous cowboy outfit, except the one thing he doesn't change is his ridiculous little tasseled white loafers that he puts spurs on. I guess everything else could fit, but not the boots. Evidently. And he is mistaken for Lloyd Fletcher, local rodeo hero. And now, here are you going to go? He's going to ride Volcano, is the name of the bull. And he goes for a new world's record before he is thrown off the bull. Andy gets chased away by the bull. So no more Andy. He wakes up and he has amnesia, but the amnesia only lasts long enough to have one gag, which is, do you remember? Do you remember your name? I can't remember. Well, do you remember anything? I remember the Alamo. And all the Texans go, yeehaw! Because if you remember the Alamo, that's what you do. But this is another amazing scene. I don't know how he gets here. There's a giant gap here, but I don't mind it. There's a giant gap where he goes from having amnesia after being thrown off a bull in a rodeo in San Antonio to a dilapidated old motel with a bar attached to it alongside a road in God knows where. And he gets
so
a
glad
biker
you remember
bar.
that, because my notes literally just say yeehaw.
Mm-hmm. He goes into a biker bar. And it's very loud, and he tries to use the phone. "Hello, operator. I'm trying to get a hold of." I guess he's trying to probably call Dottie again, or maybe call a cab to get to the bus station. I don't know. So he says, just yells, "I'm trying to use the phone." And everyone comes over, all the bikers, and they do the little thing where they click the thinger down, which I love. And you can't do that anymore because cell phones don't have that. But that's a wonderful old thing from the time period. Saying, "Did anybody tell you this is the private club of the Satan's helpers?" Nobody hit me to that, dude. It's a horrible, wonderfully sarcastic thing to say when all these men want you dead. It's off limits. Well, my mistake. Sorry. Excuse me. As he pushes past all of them outside, but happens to bump into one of their bikes, which of course domino affects all the other bikes. They run in and they run out, grab him, throw him on top of a pool table, and says, "I say we kill him." "No, I say we hang him, then we kill him." And then I love the third guy with an eye patch who goes, "I say we scalp him, then we tattoo him, then we hang him, and then we kill him." It's great. It's a great little. And then, of course, the biker mama comes up and she says, "I say you let me have him first." And everyone's like, "Oh." It's like, and then Pee-wee goes, I see. Will you let him go? It's great. Says, don't I get a last request? And they're like, yeah, why not? And it's literally a last request because he goes to the jukebox and he puts in some money and he makes a request. And then there's the waiter standing there and who's a little taller than Pee-wee. And he whispers in the guy's ear and you go, I wonder what he's asking him for. And then the guy goes, okay. And he bends over and he removes his shoes and he's actually about 5 feet tall. And it's such a wonderful little sight gag. It's so, again, the economy of this. He didn't need to use the shoes at all, but he could have also gotten them from anywhere. But the idea, this has got to be a Tim Burton thing. It's just so smart. And the other movie Pee-wee did was so dumb that it's got to be a Tim Burton thing, because the idea, I'm going to whisper something into a guy's ear. You don't know what I'm saying to him, but the answer is, hey, can I please borrow your insanely tall platform shoes? And the guy's like, absolutely, no problem at all.
Yeah, sure.
It's great. And he puts on these platform shoes, and out comes Tequila. I can't remember the name of the band that does it. It's everyone knows. Everyone knows that song. They knew it before this movie came out, but this movie made it way more popular. And all the bikers don't seem to have any interest in his dance moves until he starts smashing bottles, and then they love him. And they love him so much that after he dances Tequila, with the point both hands at your crotch, point both hands behind your butt. That was the big Pee-wee move. But it was great. He's basically an honorary Satan's helper now. Yeah. They give him a cut, which is what they call his leather jackets that got the patch on the back. He says, I hope you find your bike, man. And they give him a bike. He revs it up and he drives away directly through a billboard and then is in the hospital. I love that this movie makes you think he has other ways of winning, and then they take them away immediately. You know what I mean? Like he's got listen, this is a much better bike, honestly. It's a much better bike than the bike you had, Pee-wee. Like, and also, hey, now you got all these friends who are bikers. Like, you can hang out with them.
Satan's helpers.
Yeah.
It's a lot of hope spots is what this is.
Yes, it is. Really, it's a lot of hope spots. But in the while he's unconscious, he has a very scary dream about clowns and a broken bike, and Francis wearing a Party City devil costume. It's like it is. There's a hallway that is checkerboard floored, and it's a hallway, but like the hallway is just a bunch of arches, freestanding arches to delineate what a hallway would be, and they're all akimbo. They're all slightly askew, and the floor is tilted, somehow none of the checkerboard seems uniform, and it's all these clowns pushing a gurney down it. And I was like, man, this guy was trying out shit for Beetlejuice 3 years before he even got that movie. That's what's so cool. So anyway, he has this it's a scary dream. But he wakes up, but it's okay because he wakes up to see that his bike is on television. What a wonderful happy accident that he sees the president of Warner Brothers bestowing a bike as a gift to a child star on television. It's the kind of heartwarming news that leads the newscast.
Of course.
So he is somewhere between San Antonio and Los Angeles. And the next time we see him, he is in Hollywood, California, like Hollywood, where like there's Los Angeles encapsulates the area around. Once you walk into Hollywood, it's just a movie set. Like, I believe there's a sign that says Hollywood, and he just walks past it, and it's a movie set.
It's a movie set.
It's exactly what a kid would think Hollywood was. Yes. That's what I love about it. Where there's just people in elaborate, fun costumes walking around from place to place, and you can just interact with them. He's walking along to see everybody, and he's reacting to things, and he sees, I don't know why he decides to ask this one guy, but he does. This science fiction-y type dude in a helmet with a face mask. Hey, do you know what stage Kevin Morton is working on? Because that's the name of the child star. And then the guy says, "Oh, gee, I don't know. Hey Maggie, do you know what stage Kevin Morton's working on?" And a showgirl walks over, about 50 years old, and she says, "Yeah, it's stage 6." That's the joke. And because the man has a high voice and the woman has a low voice, and it's comedy, and it sure as hell made like 6-year-old me laugh.
Of
that
course.
Was funny.
Well, especially like old showgirl, like you have to have like a deep like. Right. I've been smoking and doing this for years.
But I also just like the idea that like honestly it should be her first and him second, because the actual less expected one is gee, I don't know. So the way he gets in, because you got to have a pass to get on the actual set. Got to have a pass. I'm sorry, sir, you have a pass. I can't let you in. So he follows friend of the show, Milton Berle from Mad World, who's telling a story. He says, "Hey, so I said to the guy, what do you think I got down here? A duck?" And then Pee-wee, just trailing behind the entourage of like 12 people, goes, "A duck." Oh, Milty. And just walks in that way. And he's able to go to stage 6 and walks in, and they're filming a scene with Kevin Porter and the bike. And Kevin Porter is a horrible little child as a movie star. He's so mean to his co-stars. But Pee-wee puts on a nun costume to stand with all the rest of the nuns, and then improvises like says Mother Superior says, "Your generosity is an inspiration to us all." And Pee-wee the nun goes, "I'll say," and like, "I'm going to start a paper route right now," and gets on the bike and walks out of the studio with it. And then this is really sweet thing where he takes off the nun costume and says to the bike, "Hey, remember me? Let's go." Like it's his horse or something. Like it's just this thing, like, remember me? Because if the bike didn't remember him, he wouldn't let him ride it. You know what I mean? Like it's this very sweet little thing. And then there's this amazing elaborate chase scene, right?
Yes.
I mean, anyone who's seen it, the chase scene is great. I'm not going to go into every detail of it, but it is all different kinds of there's all these security guys on bikes and also like electric cars. You see them unplug the electric cars, but then all the sound effects are for gas powered vehicles, which is another little weird thing that they did in post that they shouldn't have done. But there's all kinds of things. He gets rid of all of them in different ways. They go through a beach blanket bingo type of a movie set. And Godzilla. Apparently, an entirely Japanese team is making a Godzilla movie in Hollywood because they don't have movie studios in Japan, which has always felt odd to me. But then they go through a Twisted Sister music video, which I didn't realize was Twisted Sister until I probably watched it the 50th time. Like, because I wasn't into that kind of stuff at the time. Sure. And so I was like, oh, that's Twisted Sister. And I actually looked up, that's a song. You can download the song. It's on one of their albums. I was like, actually, it's not a bad song. Pretty good song.
Twisted Sister had some fun ones.
Oh, they had some fun ones.
I loved that this felt like a little bit of a movie inside a movie with this chase scene. Like it felt like a Hollywood movie inside of it. I had written down the beach vignette. Just felt like such a it kind of feels like almost in Mad World, like these kind of moments feel so what those sets were used for kind of feeling. Yep. And I just loved the whole energy in the chase scene, and that moment with the bike. I had just had written down like human bike ? Because it feels like you almost expect the bike to respond like, of course I remember you. Like,
yes.
It's just this like,
how could I forget you, Pee-wee?
Intimate, moment with him and the bike. But this whole chase scene is so much fun. It reminded me of because I am a gal and have a sister. I went to the Barbie movie, and they have kind of a similar thing where they're like going through all the sets and how they get back from real world to Barbie world. It's almost filmed very similar to this, and this feels like such a throwback kind of technique almost. Yeah. It feels very 50s, and I don't know. It just fits so perfectly into Pee-wee's whole weird world here.
Yeah. Anyway, it just comes down to him and one cop on a dirt bike that is not powered by pedals.
No.
It's powered by an internal combustion engine, and that guy's going to catch him. But then Pee-wee uses his secret weapon, which is a rocket launcher, like a rocket-powered rocket boosters, to fly over the fence and then over a house to land in a kid's yard. And the kid looks at him on that bike and goes, "Radical!" Pee-wee goes, "Yeah." And then he's escaped. He's escaped. And Pee-wee is the ultimate babyface. We love Pee-wee. We want him to win. But he has stupid babyface syndrome.
He does.
Because listen, I'm sure all of those pets in that pet store that's on fire, I'm sure they'll be fine. You got to get away from all the police who've been called because you just caused hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of damage to Warner Brothers Studios. You got to get out of here, Pee-wee. You're like a block away from where the action happened. But Pee-wee, because he's a good guy, decides to stop, and he has to rescue all the pets from the pet store. And he goes in and he lets out all these puppies and kittens and stuff. He gets a chimp out of a cage, says, "You can help me." And like the chimp is like, "No, I'm not. See you later, pal." But no, the chimp does help him because the chimp's also a good guy. Babyface chimp. And they say babyfaces don't have friends. But these two, they're inseparable. You know what I see?
Cody has Sparrow.
A buddy tag team. That's what I see.
Ooh,
that's what I see. I Pee-wee and the chimp. So they are able to extricate all of the animals, especially the snakes. Every time Pee-wee goes in, he looks at a terrarium full of snakes and goes, "Whoa." And finally, he forces himself to walk out with all the snakes and falls down. And then the fireman pulls up and the cop pulls up and he goes, he walks in and he goes, "You okay, son?" Like, "There's still a few more fish inside." Which is great. So "This boy is a hero. This boy is under arrest." And then cut to him sitting on a couch in between two very large security guards with the head of Warner Brothers watching footage of all the damage he caused on a closed circuit television, and also clipping his nails for some reason. He says, "I'm really sorry, Mr. Hawthorne. Please call me Terry." Pee-wee, Warner Brothers thinks your story would make a fantastic movie. "My story? A movie? Send them in, please." And in comes Dottie with the bike. "Oh, my bike! Hi, Dottie." And she wants a kiss, and he won't go for the kiss. So what do you say, Pee-wee? Do we have a deal? And they shake hands. I'm like, I hope you got in writing the amount of residuals you're going to get out of this thing, because it's the studios, and we all know how they like to screw over the little guy. But the next thing that we see, they agree to make the movie. The next thing we see is a drive-in with Pee-wee walking out of the concession stand with all kinds of things, and he goes and he meets all these people. He tries to give Mickey a file hidden in a foot long so he can break out of the prison bus, because we all know prison buses go to drive-ins. That's a thing that happens all the time.
All the time.
But he meets Simone with her new boyfriend Pierre, who she met in France. He got them French fries. There's all the hobos who have box seats. I don't think they let you come in with that. They have a campfire going, but also probably frowned upon in most drive-ins. But I got you guys some snow cones. But he meets all the people that he knows from the deal, from his time on the road, which is a nice little rekindling of those little friendships that we saw.
No Amazing Larry.
No Amazing Larry though. But this is where we get to see the parts of the movie based on his life, starring James Brolin, Josh Brolin's dad, and Morgan Fairchild. two absolute heartthrobs of the day on television, not in movies, but sure. But also starring. This is like he's a secret agent with the X1, which is a super awesome bike. And then Dottie is there, and that's Morgan Fairchild. And they have a fight scene with a ninja in obviously one of the same sets that they drove through in the chase scene, which I
so
love.
much fun.
And then they go into a hotel, and Pee-wee is in the movie. Like Pee-wee got a small bit part in the movie.
Which is sweet.
It is the absolute best depiction. Playing a person who can't acting. Never been done better than this. Like, it's so great. Everyone calls Pee-wee PW in the movie. The James Brolin, it's P.W. Herman. So do you have any messages for me? The name is Herman, P.W. Herman. And as he's saying those lines, the camera is on Pee-wee, and Pee-wee is mouthing them, which is a great thing that very early actors do, that you have to like break them of the habit. As I taught early, like beginning acting, you can't say the other person's lines while they're saying them. You can't mouth them. I know you think you're not. You totally are, and we notice, so you can't do that. But he's doing it, and he just like, even messages for me. And instead of like going to like a place where they would keep messages for the phones, he looks one way and then looks the other way. And then he says, "No, nothing right now, Mr. Herman," which is this ridiculous voice that they dubbed in for Pee-wee that I love. So much fun. And then there's a second scene where he's the bellhop behind the thing, and he says, "Mr. Herman, paging Mr. Herman, you have a telephone call at the front desk." And then there comes Pee-wee to like talk, and it's like, "Oh no, the Russians are after the bike. We gotta stop it. The world could be ending if we don't get the thing." So he goes and he meets Dottie. Dottie has her own bike, and inside the bike's basket is is two little doggies. It's Speck and a little pink doggie that Pee-wee rescued from the pet store. That's Speck's girlfriend. Gives her the candy that she's supposed to. She sent him over there to buy. And he's like, "All right, let's get out of here." Like, "Don't you want to watch the rest of the movie, Pee-wee?" "I don't need to watch it. I lived it." And that's the end. Also, Francis shows up, and he sits on the bike, talking to reporters. He sits on the bike, and he has a good point. Like, if I didn't do what I did, none of this would have ever happened to you, right, Pee-wee? Which, honestly, you have a point. If he hadn't stolen the bike, then he wouldn't have this amazing movie made out of his life. But he sits on the bike, and the ejector seat, it's great.
We love a smart heel.
Yeah, that's true. That's it. There you go. Done. There's the movie. It's encapsulated in it's 90 minutes of fun, and also it's one of those things of like, because I remember so fondly this movie, having watched it so many times, and I know for a fact the Pee-wee's Playhouse was so great. The Pee-wee's Playhouse Christmas special is available to watch in its entirety on YouTube. It's a thing I watch every year. It's a perfect example of what the Pee-wee's Playhouse TV show was. And so free to me on Prime Video, I don't know, through one of my weird subscriptions I have through them, was Big Top Pee-wee. And I was like, I don't think I watched this since it first came out.
And
since the man was such a since the man was such a genius, why don't I watch this too? I don't remember too much of it. I remember not liking it as a kid, but then again, I was a kid. Let's see it, watch it now. So listen, it's a real Pobody's Nerfect type of thing. Like, you know, nobody is like, they can't all be winners, right? It was odd because it, like, Big Top Pee-wee, it's like Paul Reubens completely lost sight of what made the character so lovable, is that he was this weird, like, he was a little kid, like in an adult body, but a little kid, and that was part of it, you know, like, but in this one, like he's playing someone who's an adult now, like really, not like stuck back in his brain isn't 10, his brain is actually probably more like 15, because all he wants to do throughout the entire first half of the movie is have sex. He is engaged to, though we don't find out he's engaged to her until much later in the film. He is dating the school teacher in this. By the way, the movie, I guess, takes place in 1948. I don't know why I think that, except for there's no modern technology anyway. All the cars that are in the movie are from mid-century, no later than 1950, even before that. All of there's a general store in this small town and not much else. Everyone who's in the town is either 75 years old, or they're like school children, or they're the teacher that Pee-wee is dating. And that's it. There's nobody in between. It's incredibly ridiculous. But he's dating the school teacher, and every day he goes and has lunch with her on a picnic basket right next to the school where all the other kids are eating their stuff. And every time they're laying their picnic basket, he mounts her. He literally mounts her and tries to have sex with her while these children are watching. I'm like, this is not we're watching. No. Later in the movie, there's a tornado that blows through, and it does not pick up Pee-wee's farm and take it to the land of Oz. What it does is brings an entire circus to Pee-wee's farm, and he befriends all the circus people, including a very hot Italian acrobat girl who he wants to have sex with immediately after he meets her. Yeah, it's weird. I mean, it's not weird. She's Valeria Galino from Rain Man and Hot Shots. So, like, I understand why Pee-wee would want to have
the
sex
motivation,
with her,
but not Pee-wee.
Not Pee-wee. No, not Pee-wee.
Gross.
Yeah, it's kind of gross. Also, I should mention there's a talking pig. Like he has a farm with lots of animals. One of the animals is a talking pig named Vance. It's his best friend. The pig talks. None of the other animals talk. None of the animals in the circus talk. None of the other animals on the farm talk. Just Vance talks. Just Vance. Not just Vance the pig. Nobody else. Also, I should mention he's a genius who is using chemicals so that he's like a one-man Monsanto who's trying to grow vegetables big enough that they will be able to solve world hunger on his little farm. But also he's obsessed with sex.
This sounds terrible.
It is. It's truly awful. And it's not to denigrate the man Paul Reubens, but I'm just saying they didn't make a third Pee-wee movie.
I will say, watching this made me realize. I mean, Paul Reubens is amazing in this, obviously, but it did feel like, boy, did Tim Burton do his job really well. So maybe him not be, or maybe it was supposed to be like, well, that's what he would be like at 10. What would it be like when he was 16 and obsessed with sex? Like, but I will not be watching that to preserve my memory of this lovely movie.
Yes. Oh, also, Benicio del Toro in his first ever role as really? Duke the dog-faced boy. Yes, so that is how he got his start. This movie launched the careers of both Benicio del Toro and Valeria Galino, who went directly from making this in her first movie, making out with Pee-Wee Herman in an extended, unbroken shot for 2 straight minutes. It's incredibly unsettling. It's incredibly unsettling to watch Pee-Wee Herman like play tonsil hockey with Valeria Galino in front of a waterfall with no edits for like 2 straight minutes. It's one of the most unsettling things I've ever seen. Yeah, no, it's this movie, Pee-wee's Playhouse, first season 1986. This movie came out in 87. Pee-wee's Playhouse somehow ran for several more seasons after this movie. This movie should have like ended the whole thing.
Oof.
That's how bad this movie was. It was
Zoinks,
really bad. But also it makes me, honestly, what I'm thinking of it now, you know how like all the like the I don't know, like Miley Cyrus, like I'm not Hannah Montana anymore. I'm a real woman. I'm gonna do songs about like finding myself sexually now, so to prove that I'm not a little girl anymore. Like that's what basically Paul Reubens did with this movie. It's like, I'm a man. Watch me sow my wild oats. Like, no, that's not at all what we're doing. That's not what people.
That's not what Pee-wee is. Yeah, no.
So all the old people in town decide they don't want the circus there, so they're going to like murder everybody in the circus and arrest Pee-wee if they don't leave. And so no, we'll leave. We don't want to be here. You guys want to watch us? We'll leave. People's like, no, we've been rehearsing this whole circus for so long. We got to show somebody. So Pee-wee apparently has invented a de-aging chemical. So he injects it into cocktail weenies and serves them to all the old people, and they become 6. And then they all go see the circus and they love it. And that's the end of the movie. I don't know if the old townspeople ever grow back into being regular people, but that's it. That's the whole movie. Like it's the way that movie gets solved is magical tiny hot dogs ingested by old people that make them young again. And so therefore they love the circus and the movie is solved. I cannot describe to you how bad the second movie is compared to the first movie. It's so bad.
If it wasn't the week that it is, I would have thought you were lying to me, honest to God. I thought you would have been like, we're Sands of Blinding. And I would have been like,
no.
Sounds wacky.
I wish that I was lying to you about Big Top Pee-wee. It is, I do not mean to sully the man's memory.
I mean, we had to talk about it
because everything else was so great.
Yeah,
but this, no.
We'll just block it out of our pretty little heads.
Yeah, yes. So I'm gonna say, to obviously for Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Oh, kept sewing.
We're keeping it in forever. Everyone should watch it. If you haven't watched it in a really long time since you were a kid, like find a way to watch it. Unfortunately, it's not streaming anywhere, but you can buy it digitally or rent it digitally. And I get Big Top Pee-wee as far out as possible. Like to honor his memory, everyone should round up copies of it and burn them.
Yeah.
Just to yeah.
Sounds it.
Yeah.
And watch whatever cocktail hot dogs you eat, because sounds bad.
Yeah, if they're Pee-wee brand. By the way, Pee-wee Paul Reubens could have been a much more wealthy man because everyone wanted him to put Pee-wee's name on stuff, like toys and candy, especially.
Yeah.
People there was a whole line. All the major candy companies came to him and said, "We want you to like endorse this candy." And he's like, "No, I won't do that because the kids trust Pee-wee." And if Pee-wee tells them to eat a certain candy, they'll do it. And then I'm going to be responsible for all these kids. The obesity, diabetes, cavities. I won't do it. Like
you hear that, Logan Paul?
Yeah. Logan Paul Reubens. That's. Yep. All right. No, he was a very honest dude who was very serious about what he attached the Pee-wee Herman name to. Like all the toys that had to be made had to be like incredibly like well crafted and stuff, no junk or any of that. Like you can find like Pee-wee Herman dolls from like the late 80s that were made that are they look fantastic. They were not made to break, they were made to last because he insisted on it. But because of that, he made a lot less money in merchandise than he could have.
I'm sure. Aww.
Yeah. It's kind of funny that he was so particular about what he attached the Pee-wee Herman name to, and yet he made Big Top Pee-wee.
And yet here we are with Big Talk.
Doesn't make sense. Anyway, hey, next week I don't know what we're gonna do. We're gonna review something. Hopefully nobody dies between now and then, and we gotta like upend our plans and watch something before we wanted to. That would be bad. Nobody. Hey, out there, nobody die in the
please just keep
next few days. Just we're good. Okay, all right.
It.
And then next week we'll tell you whether we are going to get the flick out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Have a good weekend.